Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my co-host Tom. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Hello, friends. I'm doing pretty well. In the busy bustle of things, you know how it is.
Yes, you're
Event quickly approaching,
sure.
and life is indeed full. So we'll get there hopefully.
Yes, you actually have to, be a working man now, and deal with that, while also dealing with, all the rest of this. Yeah, yeah.
Weird, weird.
It's very strange. Welcome to probably what most people experience. So
It's
we're
terrible.
going. Indeed, it is. Indeed, it is. Yes, real life is in fact a constant nightmare. Um, at any rate, tonight we're going to discuss what we'd like to see. We're going to talk redesigning AoS. We might do a few of these in the future. But I wanted to focus in tonight on a few key items, specifically heroic actions, monstrous rampages, and command abilities. Three things that are really, in my mind, emblematic of 3.0. Although command abilities existed beforehand, 3.0 I feel is where they've really come into their own as a concept. And obviously, heroic actions and monstrous rampages were both new here. And although I'm sure they've probably locked most of the design for 4.0, let's hope that they catch this show in time to make some last minute changes. But either way,
I
I
mean,
still would like to talk
you
about
hope,
what we
right?
want on the record. Yeah, sure, sure. Okay. So, and of course, as we get going, hey, if you're excited to talk some Warhammer, if you're jazzed for the show tonight, don't forget to hit like and do all those fun things. I really appreciate it and helps other people find the show. Uh, but first off, the news and the internal question: did Tom bring up the file and read the news before this second?
Rumor engine.
That's right, Tom. There is in fact a rumor engine, and Tom, I come to you with great tidings of joy. For this night, a savior comes to us, but not the one you think. Not some shepherd nonsense. No, no, get that out of here. No, our savior comes on sweet leather wings, wielding a sword forged in the heart of the Chaos Realm, ready to strike down all who would oppose the Wheel of Corn. Because I fully believe this is Volkia's spear. I'm serious. I think this is just 100% Volkia. We've had some Corn mentioning going back and forth in Dawnbringers. We called out Dawnbringers as being, as Corn as having a place in the Dawnbringer story. We know we can
Yep.
get new heroes. That spear, very similar. It's got a little chaos star up on the hilt. It's at an angle. Not that they necessarily take the picture at that angle, but it's certainly taking the picture at the angle of Volkia's spear, right? In the traditional model where she's coming down stabbing.
Yep. Yep.
I am just fully on board with this being Volkia's spear. Let me just say that.
Sure. I mean, I think that like looking at it, it could make sense. It's clearly chaos. There's no question about that. Have you actually done a comparison with her other spear?
No, no.
Okay.
I just looked at it, saw the
Um,
chaos star, and went, "There we go, done."
hey, so you don't know anything. It's just what you would like. You're
I'm
just
gonna will this
willing to
into existence, Tom. That's right.
cut it.
Could it be anything else? Sure. Could it be, like Stormkeep's over here trying to rain on our parade, just being a parade rainer, talking about how it's like a Varangard hero or something like that? And sure,
Yep.
could it be any of those chaos things? Yeah, of course, it could be something else. It could be a cool Varangard hero or something like that. Should it be Volkia? Yes, of course. I'm going to keep saying this until eventually it's true. If I will it long enough, it will happen, Tom. Look, it worked. It took 8 years, but we got Big Pig. Okay? So
True.
you got to start now. All right? You can't just, most people's problem is they try to will something into existence once, and then when it doesn't happen, they just give up. No, no.
I mean, that checks out. Yeah.
It takes the will of doom. Okay? That is what it takes. You have to be able to, you have to stare down an entire enemy universe in a grudge match and outwill it. That's what you got to do. Okay?
Sure. I'll accept that.
Mm-hmm. 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 I could have also made reference to Doom opening the door and standing in front of the Purple Man, and the Purple Man giving him directions, and then Doom just looking at him and not responding, and then smacking him in the face, because Doom is not affected by such simple trivialities as the Purple Man. At any rate, some of the greatest panels in comic book history. Yeah, I hope it's Volkia, but it could be any chaos related hero.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I
What
buy
else we
it.
got?
Yeah, we have the preview day, Saturday 9 a.m. And we have the new, seems like the new Bretonian standard bearer. Yes.
Yes, he is. He is a big, giant, ridiculously sized standard. I love how we're just like, we can't go more over the top with this. It is as we are all the way over the top. And
I mean, would you have it any other way?
no, it's fine. I'm not saying it's inappropriate. It's perfectly fine. It's just funny. And this guy is resin, but he looks very nice. Seems like a good clean resin sculpt. So I assume we're probably upping our resin game. Again, it's really a shame that Games Workshop and Finecast and all of that turned an entire generation of people into thinking that resin models had to be bad, because that's just not true. There's so many like great resin models from other companies and third-party producers. I paint them constantly. And they're amazing and clean and sharp and beautiful sculpts. So you can do it if you invest. So hopefully they have. This guy looks pretty good. I think this guy looks pretty nice. So it's cool enough.
It's fine. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Like that's what it's supposed to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, seems fine enough. There was also a leaked image of a new Pegasus Knight in plastic.
So here's the question: like, are you gonna paint any Bretonians? Like, are you gonna go back and
am I gonna paint any of my original, still unpainted Bretonians? The 12 Pegasus Knights I still have unpainted, or the entire lance of Grail Knights I have unpainted, since I have 10 unpainted Grail Knights, or the other 10 Knights of the Realm I have unpainted? Or are you asking me what I'm going to add to my already massive army? Because I have a whole Grail Lance and 2 Knights of the Realm and a Knights Errant and peasants and all of that. I have a pretty massive Bretonian army. Certainly at more than 2,000 points in the old world, unless they go a real wild direction.
But we now have new sculpts. That's what I'm saying. We have plastics coming. We have the new standard bearer. Are you going to pick the army back up?
No, because when your entire aesthetic of your new game is, here's basically the old stuff again, and everything new we sculpted is a minor improvement over the original stuff. It's just why would I buy anything new? I mean, if they end up sending me some of the stuff, I'm sure I'll paint some of it up.
Sure.
But I mean, my Bretonian army's already big enough that I could just play it tomorrow, right? This game comes out, I've got an army day one. I need no additional effort. Kyle said That's Vince fair. Has a pile of shame. No, it's not a pile of shame. Those are just extra things. I have this massive army. The army's done. It's a 4,000 point army. I mean, I had more stuff. You have to understand, Kyle, there was a point in time, Tom knows this well, when the dark days for many, but the great days, if you were somebody who was surfing around eBay quite a bit, where people were just fire sailing entire collections of miniatures very cheap.
I built the equivalent in AoS of a 5,000 point dwarf army for under $200.
Right.
We did our 6-month march, whatever it was called, right? Of budget AoS, how cheaply can you build an army? And we had a budget each month and all that, and we did, for under $200, I built over 4,000 points of AoS. It's probably closer to 6 now that I look at it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that was that. So we were just bulk buying entire armies for $100. You know what I mean? It was wild, man. It was a crazy time. It was, so that was the when that's what we call stonks right there. So you see it, you see the market at a low, you make a money move. Okay. At any rate, so I have that extra stuff still around from then. But it would be fun to paint a few Bretonian type things again. I mean, they are obviously quite pretty models. I have a soft spot in my heart for them, even though, like, especially things like the Grail Knights and stuff that I do think were exceptional sculpts for their time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, I mean, the preview show is this Saturday at 9 a.m.
Yep.
And we will, if there is enough AOS and old world stuff that's worth talking about, because the other two things are Kill Team and 40k, then I'll call these boys up and we'll figure out if we can do a show. I don't know what Tom's Saturday looks like, but we'll see if it's possible.
What time are we talking? Is it like
It
9
would be
a.m. or
like
something?
9 a.m. is the preview show, but it would end up being like 10 or 10:30 or 11 when we did ours, depending on how long they go.
That's pretty close to soccer, or football, if you will. But I may be able to do it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see if it's worth it. The other thing that we know, I think, given I didn't download this image because it was on like Twitter and Facebook, but they didn't share it on the website. But they shared the like 3 days to go image, okay, until the preview show, and it just might as well have said we're going to talk about Sylvaneth. So I just feel like it's almost guaranteed we're going to see, because we had made a call that Sylvaneth will be in the next Dawnbringers book, and I stand behind that. Yep. And that was more or less in my mind confirmed today.
Yeah, like the move to the Realm of Life, indeed.
Yeah, I mean they had like a tree stump with the number 3 on it, and like the bugs and stuff that they always use for Sylvaneth all around it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So we're gonna see some Sylvaneth stuff on Saturday. Yeah. Got it. Like it wasn't a real subtle hint, right?
Wasn't a difficult read.
Yeah. You didn't have to really go full detective mode here. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, I think that's all our news stuff, right? I think that's everything.
That's it. That's
okay.
It. And by the way, yes, indeed, I did bring up the file ahead of time.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to hear it, Tom. I'm very excited about that.
I can meet minimum standards sometimes.
I believe you. All right. Well, with that, let's move to some pick of the week. Tom, what would you like to share with everybody out there?
If I'm gonna be honest, like I've just been neck deep in like trying to get caught up on AOS stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Because like I've been so behind the game for so long. It's an older video, but it's something that I put on in the background just because I always enjoy his deep baritone. And that would be Haywo did a reveal show for them, like in light of the reveal show that's coming, how about you go watch Haywo's treatment of the Nova 2023 review, which was last month.
Very nice.
Again, it's older, but I enjoyed it. And
I get it. I'll pop on a little Haywo Plus when you're looking for the long form content. There's nothing wrong with that. I'll link out the Haywo Plus channel. We can do that. He was on the show last week. We're going to have him back on next month. Tom, I don't know. Did you watch the show last week?
I was in another country, and my internet was not. I was on my honeymoon.
Yeah.
And the internet wasn't good. So
no, it's fine. The only reason I asked, we had like a very long Magic discussion, and I'm not going to restart that here because, of course, with Tyler's getting into it, by the way, so we're excited about it.
Is he really?
Yeah, it's very exciting times. But we're going to have him back on, and I'll make sure you're on this show because Haywo has created custom commanders for every army in AOS, and he read me a couple of them, and he is an excellent card designer. That is what I'll say. Like, the man has a future. Like, it's top talent. It's top talent. It's good stuff. So, very much looking forward to that. But my pick of the week is going to be for Holy Wars GT. Here, what Tom is talking about being neck deep in the preparation for is Holy Havoc tournament coming up in about a month from now, almost exactly to the day. I think that's right. Which is a teams tournament held in Illinois, run by our good friend Steve Herner. That happens this fall. But signups for Holy Wars in the spring, which is on February 2nd, will go live on, I want to say, the 16th of October. So here in 5 days. at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can see all the details at holywarsgt.com. That is linked down below. It is also a teams tournament. They're both teams tournaments. They're both, partners, I guess, is what we would call it here. It's two people. It's two of you with 1,000 points. At any rate, it's an amazing tournament. It's a singular experience. The terrain is truly something you can't imagine. You have never played on a table like this, and you never will anywhere. There is no other experience like this in the world as these custom tables.
And it's back on old 4x6 tables, and so you're actually playing with more. You're playing with more space.
That is true. They are on the old style larger tables because Steve made all those tables custom. Like the boards are just built into many of the tables. Like there's not a separation for many of them, so it's not as though you could just cut them down. Right. Like the sort of one of the tables, for example, being like basically a sort of city of Venice. It has about an inch and a half of resin poured or something on it to make it like water, and then there's like a series of bridges and walkways and things that sit on top of it in this like big Venice-like city marble structure, and it's incredibly deadly and fun and wild to play on. So hope to see people there. Remember the 16th. You can find the link down below, so check it out. All right, with that, let's move to some hobby time. Tom, I'm guessing you're deep in it, buddy. How goes the hobby? What do you been working on?
Boards suck. No.
Yeah.
No, it's good. Just waiting on stuff to dry. You know how it is. A little bit here, a little bit there. I built a bunch of models. I don't know if I'm going to use all of them. I'll leave it at that. So like because like some armies still have some summoning, and like adding models to units, and so you have to like overpaint if you want to be prepared for that eventuality.
Sure, that's why I don't play those armies.
I understand that, right? And so I'm finding that I'm having to like paint and prepare more than I anticipated.
Understandable. Yes, I'm sure everybody is very sad for you. That's a serious "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina" sort of situation there.
Just all these dead bodies, they're just all around me.
Yeah, indeed. For myself, it's been quite a busy hobby time as well. So first of all, I finished these boys. Let me get these guys up here. These are the new Brute Rekkas or whatever they're called, something like that. To add into my Ironjaw's force, the sort of unit of 3. I modeled them with the big giant choppy weapons because I like the big giant choppy weapons. And I think they just look cool. I don't know what I'll actually play them as, but who cares? There'll be a video about these dudes at some point in the future. So excited about those guys. Yeah, they're cool. And so the Ironjaw's force grows. I've got almost everything from the new force added. I've also been experimenting with some of the Speed Paint metallics, the Speed Paint 2.0 metallics. The idea of a sort of contrast metallic is a fascinating idea, of course, but I was putting an old Rakcast model here to work to see how they come out, and I have to say, so far I'm actually quite impressed by these, but that'll end up being a video as well as we as I deep dive into those. Also got a great game in this weekend. Christian Weir was down. Nice. He and Brendan came over, and we got a good game in. It did not go well for me. You might say that everything went wrong. And there were no orcs left alive. But that's okay. It was a very fun game. So it was the first time I've got Zogrok on the table, the new Ironjaw guy who touches your models and gives them mortal wound stuff. Yeah. Okay. Never got the ability off once. Tom, it goes off on a 2-up.
That's brutal.
I rolled that 3 times.
I mean, that's par for that course for you, though.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, like, if you have to roll a dice, you will simply not be able to make it work.
It was shocking. It got to the point where it was just funny because, like, Zogrok for a moment was like my only hero left for like sort of a series of turns. He was my only hero left. Yeah. And so my general had died. And I was like, No problem. Bonus command point on 2 up. Rolled a 1. And I was like, that's no issue. I was like, that's fine, whatever. And I was like, okay, I'll mortal wound this unit. 2 up. Rolled a 1. I was like, yep, okay, cool. I did that 2 turns in a row. 1-1, 1-1. It was great. I was like, this is amazing. This is the new model syndrome if you've ever seen it, right? Because it was his first game after being painted. So he had to be terrible the first game. That's what happens. So
I mean, they're like as superstitious as it is. I mean, there's some truth to it.
Yeah.
Like things always perform their worst when you put them on the table for the first time.
Sure. It was still fun. It was a real fun game, and yeah. So that was my hobby time. Pretty good. We got a lot of stuff done. And after I'm done with this experimentation and filming and everything, I am turning to my Warlord for upcoming Holy Havoc, as I need to craft a new Warlord. So there we go.
Nice.
All right. So with that, Tom, why don't we get to the main topic tonight, shall we?
Delightful.
All right. Main topic. Redesigning AoS. As I said at the top, I want to start with heroic actions, monstrous rampages, and command abilities. And audience out there watching, first of all, how come you haven't hit like yet? There's so many more of you watching than have hit like. Go ahead and click that button. All right. And hit like for your new models being terrible, or whatever you like, whatever reason catches your fancy. And we're gonna dive into this. But I'll be curious out there, audience. I want to hear about your feelings on these individual items as we're going. So do please share as we get into it. All right. So let's just jump. We're gonna just jump straight in. My goal here is 4.0 is coming. I'm sure it's already written. I don't care. If it is, it is. If it's not, it's not. And our goal here is just to talk about what these things should be.
Yeah.
And how we feel they should function. What's the best sort of world where this could work? What's wrong with them currently? And what's the better world for them to be in? Hades Death God says, say something we like and we will. Hades, you're a great guy. How about that? There you go. I'm not above that. I'm not above pandering, Hades. All right. Okay.
True.
So, we're gonna do these in order. Okay. Let's start with heroic actions.
Yep.
Okay. And Tom, I want your thoughts here, because I'm sure you have many thoughts, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But here's my list. What's wrong with heroic actions? I think this is maybe the best system out of the 3 we're going to talk about tonight. All right? Okay. Here's why I think so. It's pretty good overall. Like, it's got a good memory trigger. What I mean by that is, like, it's a start of turn thing, right? It's okay, start your turn, you do your heroic action, you pick your battle tactic. Like, there's several things. There's a lot of, like, cleanup stuff you do at the start of the turn. It's kind of easy to remember that's one of those things, right?
Yep.
Most of the time, it's a single-use thing. Like, you're picking one hero, you're doing one thing.
Yep.
Right? And there is an easy default, which I consider both a good and a bad. All right? Like, the easy default, no, you don't know what else to do. You just say, I roll the die and go for a 4-up for a command point. Right?
Yeah.
That's it. Like, that's just your no thought put into this. I've got nothing else to do default. Right? That's a good thing, because then you can sort of help alleviate the need for a choice. But it's also a bad thing, because it kind of always sucks when you have a default and you don't really have interesting choices you're making most of the time.
Do you not, like, I don't know. To me, like, the healing always weighs strongly, right? Like, if I have somebody that's injured, I don't just default to the command point, especially if, like, I have a good economy within my army, right?
Sure. I'm not saying you never use the other ones. I'm just saying there's the default, right? It's like, because the healing one, you have to have an injured hero outside of combat.
Sure.
Of right? Course. which you don't always meet. So you might have a guy you
Right.
want to heal but can't. Right.
Sure.
Best day ever is once per game, and you don't often like you. Sometimes you have a hero you want to use it on, sometimes not. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the bonus unbind, there can be entire games where that's just never even something you're going to utilize, either because you already have enough unbinds or dispels, you don't need extras, or whatever, right? Like,
Right.
your
Right.
opponent doesn't even have any wizards at all, like whatever, right? If you say you're playing me, that's a dead choice, okay? Because
Right.
I don't have any wizards, that's not happening. Okay.
Right. True.
And so here's really here's my challenges / questions. Okay, I really hate the different triggers for each one. Like, this one is a bravery check, this one is automatic, this one's
Right.
4 up, but
We've
also
already
sometimes a 2 up.
we've already said that like it needs to be standardized, much like monstrous actions. It needs to be standardized.
Yep. Sure. And we'll talk about that later. But also the question that I ask here really is this the right set of effects? All right, so there's my quick talk.
Okay, unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by the right set of effects?
Could we think of better things that would make more sense for the heroes to be doing at the start of the round, other than the 4 that are on offer? Right? Is this the right 4? Is 4 the right number? Should there be more? Should there be less? Should they be different? Like, this isn't a bad system, right? Don't get me wrong. Okay.
So can I, and maybe this is like complexity for complexity's sake. So maybe the answer here is no, and I'm just going to acknowledge that right out of the gate.
Okay.
Do we have to have the same 4 for each Grand Alliance?
Okay. Unpack that. Give me a pitch.
So what if some like immediately I went to like a command ability, which is not right. Like initially I went to something like rally, but I want to talk about rally because this will capture the heart of what I'm saying. Rally feels like an order ability. Everybody can do it, but it really feels like an order ability. Now I understand it's flavored differently for different armies. Like with undead armies, rally is used to restore troops, and it's reflecting like their hardiness.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. But when we look at heroic actions, like I just wonder if maybe there ought to not be something like 2 standard abilities.
Okay.
And then maybe a different one for each Grand Alliance that's indicative to who those Grand Alliances are.
Okay.
And what their heroes are doing, like that, it's really capturing the essence of that. So for chaos, it could be something warp related. It could be something like, so you could lean into the flavor with something like this, or you could lead into like kind of the zeitgeist of the army. Order being about structure, about commands, about like giving, the various elements that are associated with order. Destruction being about rampaging and about marauding and whatever else, right?
Sure.
Like death could be about returning troops, right? Like like traditionally, like we've had many bites at this apple of like, how do we regen troops? For a while it was an automatic ability, then it was a command ability, then it was a spell. Like there's a bunch of different things we've bitten at, but oftentimes it's the heroes doing this. Maybe the right answer is to seat that in heroic actions.
Okay.
Where the heroes are summoning back units. I say all that to say, I wonder if you could have like, and it would give more distinct flavors to the individual Grand Alliances.
Okay.
So it would, and so in an ideal world, if I were designing it, I would do something like this. You have 2, and I recognize the complexity here is significant. You have 2 base, you have 1 Grand Alliance, and you have 1 army base.
Okay.
1 from your army. And then so now that would recognize like from a complexity level, you're moving from like 4 base up to like 20, 24 or somewhere in that space of base heroic actions that are kind of uniform.
We'd have 25 heroic actions, 1 for each army, plus 4 plus 2.
Yeah.
So you'd be at
Yeah.
31.
31. There you go. I don't know. That's just my gut. And maybe the answer is like it's not for every anyways.
No, and
Something
that's
like
where I was
that.
going to push you. Like,
Yeah.
is it army
Yeah.
based or is it Grand Alliance based? They don't pull too much on the alliance based stuff anymore, although they do a little. Like
Right.
the armies of renown are largely alliance based, right? Like they can go into any destruction force that has blah 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 blah,
Yep.
right, and so on.
Yep.
So it's not as though that's like a technology they've completely abandoned. Yeah, I like. Are you thinking these are existing in the core rules? What I mean is
Well,
like, imagine
what
you
I would say
flip
is
to the
this.
heroic action page in the core
Yep.
rules. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So 4.0 book, we get it. Here's what it looks like. You turn the page, heroic actions, 12.2 or something, right? And it's like all heroes have access to these 2 command abilities. Or sorry,
Or
these 2
3.
heroic actions. Let's
You
say
could
2.
do 2 or
Let's keep
3.
it 2 for
Okay.
the moment,
Yep.
okay? Because
Yep.
that'll end up
Yep.
in an interesting, nice round number.
Yep.
And then order heroic actions, destruction heroic actions, chaos heroic actions, death heroic actions. There's 2
Sure.
for
2,
each
2,
of those,
2,
right?
2. Yep.
So
Yep.
now you have 10 total, but the 2 are more flavored to like generically be about the broader themes of that alliance. Okay.
Sure. Yep.
So you still end up with the same number. Like you still have 4, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I think that there could be something to that. I'm going to be honest, I hadn't thought about that at all, but I don't hate that. I don't hate that one bit.
And then maybe the answer is you don't always add them from armies, right? But that could be a lever that could,
unless
right.
it's like unless it's something specific the army's doing, like they did with S2D or something like that. I'm not saying you can't ever. I'm just saying like it's not an expected part of the book.
Sure.
It can be like part of your allegiance abilities is you get new heroic action options. That can still be a thing. In the same way your book could give you Monstrous Rampages or your book could give you command abilities because, it's just something that is endemic of your army, right? Or emblematic of your army, perhaps a better word, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that would lend more weight to the Grand Alliance decision, right? Like right now, it's not really a decision. We functionally, like Grand Alliance functionally means 0 at this point.
Sure.
Because you're not like it may dictate allies, but your army is dictating allies. Your Grand Alliance is not dictating your allies.
Yeah. Let me answer a couple comments here, because I think there's some interesting discussion going on.
Okay.
Stormkeep said I'd rather have army specific actions rather than alliance actions. Yeah, I get that. They'd be more specific. But I think then that's getting too specific and there'd be too many out there. The advantage to this and keeping 10 of them in the core rules is they would be knowable. Right? Like people would be able to know them and think about them.
Yeah. 10's not too many.
Yeah, it's not too many. Like 10 is not too many of a thing. That's a knowable number. The assistant ref and Dylan Steele both said, why not get rid of heroic actions and give us more options for command abilities? Because I think they are different things. I really do feel that they're different, and it's good that they're 2 different resources. Heroic actions feel more like the hero itself doing something for itself. And that's why I don't like heroic actions that in any way are like going into another, that are in any way spilling over to another unit. Like the heroic action should be self-contained. It's something that hero is doing that is affecting them and them alone, right? And you wouldn't want to staple every one of these like specific command abilities with this hero may issue this command ability and this hero must be the receiver of the command ability when issued in this way. Like, oh God. You know what I mean? Like, what a nightmare. No, just have this extra thing, and then it's not running on this. It doesn't have to work against the resource of command points. It doesn't have to balance against that. I don't have to try to figure out, do I need to increase the command point pool accordingly? Like, it's a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
By keeping it in the core rules and having it be like, and having it be a set thing that's really there to like speak to the flavor of what the heroes of that alliance are like. I think you could lock it in and keep it pretty reasonable. Kyle Nelson said, I don't see how this doesn't exacerbate issues we have when new battle tomes are released. I don't know how it interacts with it at all, Kyle, unless you want to unpack that more for me, because it's not happening in the battle tomes.
Right? I think he's assuming my one suggestion to include 1 with every army.
Oh,
If
I'm putting the
yeah,
kibosh on that. You had the right idea at the
yeah,
beginning, which was
yeah,
locking it to a sort of Grand Alliance function. Because, the two you could sort of preserve, I suppose, right?
sure.
Uh, might be like what are the two we preserve, Tom? What are the let's say you pick two that are generic. Out of the current list, what are the two you preserve? I mean, I have an easy answer.
Okay, let me hear yours.
It's best day ever and the bonus command point.
You mean finest hour and bonus command point?
Correct. Those are the two you preserve.
See, so let me push back on that.
Sure.
So I thought about finest hour potentially preserving that, but I wonder if what might not be better is combat bonuses that map to the Grand Alliances, and so that may be an easy customization,
You're saying that every
right?
one of them would have some kind of each of the four would have something effectively replacing best day ever down there, like something
Finest,
a specific combat focused one, but focused on their flavor. Okay, I can accept that.
yeah.
So one of the
Um,
heroic actions in all four buckets is like some kind of combat related thing, but in the flavor of that alliance. Okay, cool.
yep.
So then what do we keep? The heal and the
Yeah, I
thing, or
think I think maybe. So um I think the right answer would be you keep the command ability maybe in the heal. And then like the unbind could be reflavored. Um, it could be reflavored to be something like calling upon Sigmar, or it could be reflavored as uh like uh like warp storm something, right? Like you're invoking larger like disruptive energies or et cetera, right? Like
sure.
so you could reflavor some of it in those ways. Um yeah,
No, I like the
yeah.
concept. I think you're onto something there, right?
I would want and maybe what we could play in is that to have if you're wanting it to be buffing, right? Like you want it to be focused on those individuals. Maybe what the right answer is to have something like this. You have something that is action point or command a point
Mm-hmm.
action point, command point affiliated, and then you have an offensive one, a defensive one, and then some other utility. And what I mean by defensive is that maybe those are some of your custom fits in both off. Like maybe destruction doesn't have a defensive one; they have an offensive one, and they have something else, right?
Sure.
So like a different, like maybe a mobility utility rather
Mm-hmm.
than rather than uh, offense and defense. But you could play with that, and it wouldn't just have to be bonuses; it could be healing. So healing would sit in that kind of defensive type of space, like the winds, like summoning or like embracing the winds of Shaiish, right? For death could be a healing, like a self healing,
Sure.
bathing in the
Maybe we
winds
don't
of
give
Shaiish
him. Maybe
or
we don't
something.
keep the healing one at all. Okay, because
Right,
like it does
right,
feel very specific. So sure, like death could get a bigger heal one. By the way, then maybe we don't need to put like massive self heals on every death hero that gets
right.
printed, right?
Sure, indeed, indeed.
And
So so again, I don't have specifics like
sure,
because this is kind of spur of the moment, but
yeah, no, it's
that's
fine.
that would be my gut would be is to do something like that where we are playing in the space of Grand Alliance identity and helping give distinctive flavors to the Grand Alliance itself.
Okay.
Because that's just not something that we've seen in design in the last like two editions.
No, that's interesting. And it could be a sort of mechanic that is acting as an expressive element in the core rules that's sort of talking about, that gives you a bit of a taste of the flavor of what that alliance is about writ large. Because there are
Hmm.
some unifying concepts, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Uh, and Savage Lupine said, "Wait, how many of these just are just renaming, not reflavoring with this idea. Well, we'd moved to 10, so I assume a bunch of them are getting created out of whole cloth. Some of them would be renamed, like maybe the heal thing ends up in somewhere else.
Like and narrower, like right, like it's not going to everybody; it's only going to some armies.
Right. We got a couple people in the comments saying that basically we don't trust GW to do this. We're not talking about GW at the moment. We're saying how things should be.
We're making this.
Yeah, we're doing this. Okay. Like that's just pessimism on a scale I can't abide, right? Like you have to always push them to say this is the right way to do the thing. Not like if there's a good idea, but there's a chance for that they'll fail, they need to elevate themselves and rise to the occasion. We don't not do cool things because we're afraid they might duff it. All right. If we did that's a sort of risk aversion in design that will lead that way leads damnation. Okay.
Right.
And so like we have to push for these things. Just saying we think they'll screw it up or they have a bad track record. All that's true. I'm completely empathetic to where you're coming from, but that doesn't at all change how things should be. Right? Mm-hmm. That's like saying, well, a lot of things in the world are bad, so we might as well not try. Like, no, we must always try. Okay.
And just hold GW to that higher standard.
And just hold them to that higher standard. Yeah, like absolutely. Absolutely. And so like now to answer Rory, I see out there, Rory TB had made a couple of comments to the order of like, you know, you're making a choice anytime you add a mechanic, and you have to always ask the question, is it taking away more than, or is the juice worth the squeeze effectively, right? Mm-hmm. And I do very much agree with that. Tom and I think about that all the time certainly when I'm writing the game, when Tom's developing the games I write. It's a common point of discussion of like, is this worth it? I think heroic actions. Oh, good.
And this is why I said, you know, like the complexity may not be worth it, right?
Yeah,
because
which is a fair
we're
answer.
adding, like that's where my heart was. But at the same time, right now, it's just boring.
I mean, if you're a regular player of an army, or even a couple armies in a faction, the complexity does not go up for you at all. You had 4 now, you have 4 then.
Correct.
That's it.
Right. It's the complexity is understanding how your abilities interact with the other army.
Sure. What are the 2 things they're going to bring to the table? Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
That are new or different. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not nothing, but heroic actions in general, I do think are one of those things that falls on the good side of it. They're quick. I don't see people sit and deliberate over these for a long time because there is a default. As I said, it's both a good and a bad, right? Like, heroic actions are generally very quick. People tend to like them. I think most people like Best Day Ever and find it to be fun when they call it on their hero and then do something cool. Like, Assistant Ref had mentioned somewhere back that the +1 save can be warping, and I'm like, yeah, sure, but okay. Like, it's still worth it. It's fun. It's fun to have that thing. Like, not everybody gets Mystic Shield, or can cast it reliably. Not everybody has plus to save effects, but it's neat that you have something you can do that will make your hero a little tougher for a short amount of time, right? I think like if we were to test heroic actions and we were to survey on these, I think this would come out very, very positive overall in like how most players would survey and estimate this. That's my feeling of the thing. Yeah. I don't see much in the way of complaints about heroic actions. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is why I say I think they're the closest where to like being good design. All right, let me skip to this. Let me jump to my next slide here. Let's do the simple version and then the complicated version. So you just kind of stretched out the bigger redesign, which is fine. I have no issue with that. Let's say, Tom, they want to keep it to a simplified system. We're just going to keep the same 4. Like, this is the lowest effort rewrite of this. Okay, we're going to start at the simplest point and then move out. Does that work? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So, to me, the simplest point is this. You move to a single check for all heroic actions. Either they're all automatic or they all check on the same number. Spoilers, my answer is they're all automatic. You just do them.
Yeah.
Okay? No more rolling a dice. We're going to make it even quicker. Just what's the thing you want? Okay?
Yeah.
Healing, you heal a D3 wounds. You still got to be outside of combat. It's fine. But you just do it. No more weird bravery check where for some reason the ultra fast regenerating troll can't heal himself because he's like bravery 6. but the bag of bones that's just sitting there on a skeletal horse basically auto heals because it's on a 10. Like, tying that to bravery was just the stupidest choice ever. It's like somebody doesn't understand what a bell curve looks like when they wrote that rule. Like, that is a bargain basement fail of understanding how math works.
Yeah.
So we're just going to make it heal at D3 wounds. You just have to be outside of combat. That's it. It's not that big a deal. It's a D3 wounds. Okay? It's not that much healing. So whatever. Command point, you get a command point. That hero has to use it. Same restriction applies.
Sure.
Right? Like, that's it. It's that hero. You're giving it to that hero. So, and if you don't use it by the end of the turn, it burns off. All the same. Right?
Yep.
So it's already a very limited command point that we're rolling for here. Yeah? So just give them it. Just have it. Go ahead. Right? This one hero can get it. They have to be the one that uses it, and it burns off at the end of turn. Not even the end of the battle round. Like it burns off the end of turn. Unbind, you do that. You get a bonus unbind to spell. Like, that one's already automatic. It's the correctly designed one. Right?
Yeah.
And then best day ever, the other one that's in my estimation correct, if we're going to keep it. Just again, because you just do it. It's just a thing. You just do it. It's fun. You call it out, it's fun. You do it. Again, still limited to once a game. Right? Great. There's your 4. That alone is better to me. Way better. We've gotten rid of the silly dice rolls.
Well, it's cleaner.
Different. It's cleaner. Right?
Yeah, from a design standpoint. Yep.
Like, bare mins, we've cleaned it up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now let's take a step out. Let's take a step out of this. Right?
Yep.
And say, like, what's our world look like where we either are these the right 4? Now, here's what I'll say. That unbind, the bonus unbind to spell, I really want to chuck that thing off the roof.
It is by far the weakest.
Well, and it's funny too, we're saying this now, because in the current season it's actually really useful.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Ironically, here we are, 2.5 years into AoS 3.0, and really for the first time, this heroic action is, like, relevant in the meta. And it will be there until the end of this, but we probably won't have a wizard season again for, like, all of 4.0, so who cares?
Right.
We didn't have one. This is the first wizard year in the 9 years or whatever of AoS, so we're probably not getting another one anytime soon.
No.
I don't know what it's doing, and it feels like we could it feels like, well, they're not going to keep Primal Dice, Stormkeep. Like, there's no universe where Primal Dice becomes a standard mechanic. That's just clearly a seasonal thing. Right. I agree with it is relevant in the current season. Like, I cannot argue with that. It's not going away in the current season. We're talking about a change of 4.0, so the season would be gone. These would be here.
But so was Bounty Hunters. It was relevant in its current season, right? Mm-hmm. But that did not stick around.
Yeah. I think the bonus unbind to spell just should be jettisoned. And if our concern, Warpstone Enjoyer said, isn't that just your anti-magic bias? Maybe. I don't know. Could be. Who knows what goes on in your subconscious? It's entirely possible.
What if you, like, replace that
I just feel like it's not interesting most of the time. I'd rather have an interesting choice there. Go ahead.
I'm thinking. Okay. Like, what if you tied it to, like, here's a weird one.
Go for it. Hit me.
Instead of finest day ever, or, like, not instead of that, but, like, in place of the unbind, what if you, like, granted yourself a 4-up ward save against mortals?
Oh, against mortals specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, something like that. Here's what I'll say. It would be interesting if, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be defensive. Could be a 5-up against mortals or something like that, right? Maybe that's the more relevant thing. I don't know, depending on what the balance is. Again, it'd only be against mortals. It's not against all wounds, so I understand it's quite limited, right?
Right.
You have to understand it like that. But again, that's still quite situational and specific. And so my concern there is I would like it if we had something that people were actually interested in using. right? Um, and it would be interesting if it was something that like there's a lot of ways we could go with it that I haven't thought through deeply.
Mm.
Okay. Like you could have the hero gain a bonus to cast a spell. Like we could have a magic related one for a single spell cast, right?
Right.
You could go the opposite direction instead of if we're gonna have heroes randomly just pushing magic away for no reason, right? It would make more sense if like a wizard gained a bonus to cast a spell, like focus or something like that, right?
Or even just give them a reroll on the next spell they cast.
Sure, something like that, right?
And well, and the reason why I would do something like that is that it forces order. Like, yes, you get this benefit, but it also forces you to not wait until after
Sure.
until after all their unbinds are used or something like that, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it actually forces your hand on what you're casting. And so
Yep.
there's a downside potentially to it.
Yep. So Cody, I want to address this real quick. Cody said, endless spells have gotten juiced in the past year. This GHB is the main reason we don't see them as much. I mean, I agree that this GHB is death to endless spells. There's no point to playing endless spells in the current GHB. Without primal dice, we would see much more use, and no access to heroic willpower means non-magic armies will get abused by them. Not necessarily. One, we were talking about at the launch. All endless spells will be rebalanced at the launch of 4.0. I mean, I can guarantee that. And
Always.
That's one. Two, there's no reason that low magic or anti-magic armies couldn't have some rule that, like, if you were going to ever back in an army specific thing, putting like heroic willpower or something like that in those armies is what makes sense. Like
Yeah.
if those no magic armies have some kind of answer, in the same way that Longbeards used to be able to grumble and like kick endless spells out of the game, right?
Right.
That kind of mechanic is what should be occurring in those armies to keep them in balance and in play. That's how we should be addressing that, right? So yeah, I don't know what the right answer is there. I mean, it could be as simple, Tom, right, as like choose either the combat or shooting phase. The hero gains +1 or +2 attacks in that phase, or something like that, right? It could be literally that easy, right?
Sure.
Just so like cool, a fighty hero thing, right, or whatever.
Well, and this is why I think that it's way more interesting if it was Grand Alliance specific.
Sure.
Like frenzied assault, right? Like that screams destruction to me. +2 attacks, in melee or whatever to your profile, to your hero's profile, not their mount or whatever. Like something in that space. I could readily see. I don't know. It's fine how it is. It could be simplified, but it could also be better.
Let's go a little. Let's move a step farther out. Let's get into some blue ocean here, okay? Let's not worry about the number of heroic actions there are, or replacing anything, or anything like that, right?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, that's a good point there, Kyle. Kyle said like my bonus attack thing would be like you could add like on the charge, like +1 attack or +2 attacks on the charge or something like that. That's a great idea, Kyle. I like that. Let's talk about what were the type. If you were going to just add new heroic actions, again, don't worry about what we're adding as far as complexity goes. This is just blue sky design, right? It's for somebody else to replace later. What's the types of areas you think should be explored with heroic actions? What are the types of things that would make sense in your head? I mean, you mentioned the mortal wound shield, okay? Which sure, I can see that.
Durability, leadership, mobility, combat.
Okay.
And then maybe something utility. Like those are the super categories that I would create if I were playing in this space.
Okay. Yeah, I could see like a sort of lead from the front heroic action.
Yep.
Like something where, if the hero charges that turn and fights in the combat phase, then they gain the strike first effect or something like that, right?
Sure.
Some kind of effect like that.
Be really powerful. Like that would be good just from the standpoint of like it would have an effect on like other units if they have the ability to pull other units into combat.
Sure. Absolutely. One of the challenges with these is trying to make sure that they don't end up just being abused by the 14 wound monster heroes and not ever used by the tiny heroes, right? I mean, this is one of the big challenges to the design with this.
Yeah.
Rory had said, what if hero actions were genuinely powerful, but each hero can only do one action a game? Then it's more interesting when to pull the trigger, not just roll for CP. Yeah, maybe. There might be something to that. I'd have to think that through. It's a big change, but I think there might be something to that.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't hate that.
Yeah, sure. And assistant ref does bring up a good point that if you're going that far out, I assume you mean like deeper in the turn, why not ditch the start of the player turn trigger? The advantage is it's an easy place to remember, but I don't know it actually makes that much sense. Yeah, it's a good point. Like doing those kinds of like later in the turn triggers are always a bit questionable. You're not wrong, assistant ref. Like that's fair.
Yeah, but it does feel like heroic action should probably be taking place in the hero phase. Like that does feel right to me.
Yeah, there's something about the timing that works, but then that means we should restrict our design accordingly to like where you can feel or understand the effect, right? Like right there.
Yeah, the rockability of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I think
Like
that
I read it as the heroes are making a pivot on the battlefield based
sure.
on what's going on around. That's how I read that, and it's them exerting their will on the flow of the battle
Sure.
in a way that's not like a command of it.
Yeah, I mean um, I think that if you look at something like, triggering for bonus attacks or allowing them, I like a reposition where just this hero is moving and maybe that's limited in some way. Like it's a direct move of inches, not a direct move of their movement value or something like that.
Sure.
So that big monster heroes who have like fly 16 can't just abuse the crap out of it. Could be fine.
Right.
I know some people are very opposed to hero phase movement, but I like legitimately don't mind a hero phase move if it's you can't do it in combat if it's treated as a normal move and it's like a 5-inch move or something like that. Something like that could be very, very potent and useful. Especially on foot heroes who need to reposition to cast a spell and bring somebody into range or something like that. That might end up being used much more on those smaller heroes potentially.
Yeah.
But like that kind of stuff all makes sense to me. I think there is fertile ground here that we could explore, even when talking in like very generic terms where you have to make them work for kind of every army, every hero, right?
Yeah.
And I think that Rory has a good point where he said, like if we moved these, or even if we moved more of them to once a game, one of the things that's fun about Best Day Ever is it is a big, potent effect, right? And that's obviously governed by the once a game thing. So if you moved, if you had another one that was that you had one or two more or something like that were once a game, I do feel like you want to be careful that you don't back yourself into a corner.
Like imagine something like Seasoned Veteran.
Sure.
That allows you to. It gives you one reroll before the end of the turn, much like you'd get one command dice. You get one reroll, whether that be like hit, wound, save, ward save, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Tactical insight. Reroll one hit, wound, or save roll before the end of the turn, something like that. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Cygnus says second best day ever. Yeah, it's like it was a pretty good day. Pretty good day. Yes. Absolutely. But I think there's a lot of ground that could be explored here. And one of the things I like about your idea, kind of just to synergize this all together, is that I actually hadn't even thought about it at all, Tom, but I really like that world you described because we actually could explore some of this other space, right? With the Grand Alliance more specific abilities. Because then you're designing a little more flavor, right? Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like Rory TB said, once per game, fight on death, only foot hero. Sure, like something like that could be absolutely there. Like fight to the last. If the hero dies this turn, they may, fight before one additional time before they're removed from the battle or something like that.
And realistically, that should live. Like if you were to have something like that, that should live in this kind of space.
Right.
Like, not only are we talking about, like, I'm talking about just grand alliances in general. Like, if you're going to do anything in the core rules, grand alliances are like the most, like, I don't, what do you like?
I'm
Just
laughing
comments.
at Halo, who
Yep.
called it last day ever. So you've got best day ever and last day ever, which I do love. I'm not gonna
I
lie.
mean,
Like, I'm pretty in for last day ever. Like, you get to fight on death and you get a +1 to wound. It's your last day ever, or your +1 to hit, or I don't know, whatever. It's,
yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, no,
No,
that
+1
that checks
attack.
out.
There you go. +1 attack and you can fight on death. Yeah, it's your last day ever. This is it. Make it count.
Yep. No, I don't hate that. Like, you're not going to get into discrete design in books about grand alliances because that's a
Right.
level above, right? Whatever that resource is.
Yep.
But in core rules, it feels like you should be able to get into grand alliances.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
that's the place to do that because it communicates something about the what is cohesive across all of death. What is
Yeah.
cohesive across all of chaos?
Right, like the destruction when you could easily imagine them having one that's like a heroic action that's like +1 attack, +2 if they charge. Like, that's a perfect destruction offensive heroic action, right? Like, you can
Yep.
just you can see that existing in destruction. Basically every destruction army has somebody in it, some heroes in it who want to charge, who want to be more fighty. Every like it's just a thing. Ogres love that. Ironjaws love that. Everybody loves that, right? Like, goblins even love that. There's plenty of things in the Gits book that want to get in there and use that kind of an ability,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have some trolls that definitely want that, right? Like, man. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, the Colt Spink said, I know this is off topic, but strike last effect. My buddy will attack with a unit, uses a character that gives the strike last effect to that unit, and attack me at the end a second time. Is this how it works? It always seemed off. No. No, Colt, it is not. I don't know you'd tell me what two abilities you have interacting, but no, you can't fight again unless you're specifically instructed to fight again. The fact that you suddenly, if you gain strike last after you attack, just nothing happens. The okay, nothing changes. But yes, you only fight again if something instructs you to fight a second time.
Yeah. It it yeah, we would need to know what the specific abilities are that are interactive.
And by the way, something somebody said earlier, which Rory just repeated, and I meant to call out, was Grand Alliance feels like where the color pie, would sit in this. And I've pushed for years that we should have better definitions around the color pie, right?
Yeah.
And like, absolutely the case that should be that way. So
Yep.
yeah, I think they could just do a lot with heroic actions, and I think it would be really great if some of these heroic actions could lead into champions and not commanders or whatever, i.e., 9 wound or less heroes versus 10 wound or more heroes, right? I don't want it to all be that way, but I think it'd be really cool if some of them pushed more about that way.
Sure.
Right, where they were better or had more effect or clearly more incentivized for heroes without a mount or something like that, or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Because I like the foot heroes have always struggled in this game, and heroic actions, if they become actually something useful, interesting, have some real utility, could be a way to incentivize those foot heroes coming back in, besides just the buff bot foot heroes.
Yeah.
Who are only there to be like, I give a bonus, and then that's the only reason I exist, right? It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. Cool. Very good. I think that's yeah, Colt, you'll need to tell me what the specific unit is, but I mean, it's like, again, if it says you fight, like you get to fight a second time, but you do so with the strike last effect, then sure, then they get to fight a second time, which there are plenty of units like that. That's how they've started designing stuff.
Yep.
So, if that's what's going on, then sure, they get to fight twice. But like, it's that's different wording than just the strike last effect applied for some reason. right? Okay. All right. So, yeah, like if you're talking about Heralds of Ruination on Chaos Chosen, yes, that does allow them to fight twice once a game, but the strike last effect applies to the second fight. That is correct because the ability instructs you to do both things. So there you go. Okay. Cool. Next up. All right, Monstrous Rampages. I got a lot more to say here. Let's talk about these guys. These things are wildly unbalanced, right? Right? I mean, that's just where we start. That's where we're going to start this. Yeah. Monstrous Rampages are so far out of whack. Like, heroic actions, I think, could be defended as the Unbind one aside, which, again, in the current season, I will openly admit, has now come into its own. Like a scared flower, it has now opened up its beautiful bloom and showing its little petals to the sunshine. Our little command ability has emerged from its cocoon, a beautiful butterfly, and we now really have all four that are theoretically useful, right? In many games, I've used all four of those.
Yeah.
Okay. In the current season, so fine.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that is not true for Monstrous Rampages. These are just wild. Okay. These are completely inequitous, just madness, lunacy, downtown crazy town. Okay.
Yep.
If there's going to be a dice roll for these, you should roll the dice first. Then if it's successful, then you do the monstrous action because they all just trigger. Like on a X, you may do the monstrous action for this monster. Since all monsters get to do one, it would be logical to gate this one behind a dice roll.
Yep.
Right? The heroic action, you get one and only one.
Yep.
Okay. And but with this, every monster gets to do it. So I think it's fair that you go, okay, 3 up, this guy gets to do one, pick one off the list. 3 up, this guy gets to do, no, up, he failed, don't have to worry. No decision needs to be made. I don't need to worry about stomping or roaring or which thing is the right thing to do or my special book things or whatever. I just move on. Okay?
Right.
But you should be rolling the dice. Like, this is very basic game design. That you should be doing the check, and then if you pass the check, executing the action.
Yep.
This is like really simple stuff. Okay?
Yep.
The timing for these is bad, as there's no actual trigger at the end of the charge phase for other stuff you're needing to do. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and moreover, it's happening in between 2 of the most exciting things you do in the game, which is charge and fight your first combat.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
Hades Death God says, I don't quite understand. Isn't that basically the same thing in reverse? No. Okay, let me explain, Hades. Let me get into this. Okay. Why do you do the dice roll first? Okay, because a lot of people have choice paralysis. So they'll sit there and go, do I want to roar? Do I want to stomp? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And all of their various choices might have different rolls to see if they happen or not. So they hem and haw for a long time about which one to use and then roll and fail.
Right.
So they wasted all of the choice time to end up in a failure state. Okay?
Right.
Whereas if we flip it and they just go,
roll a dice.
Okay, I got a 3. Pick. But if you enter so you'll have that is the same amount of time theoretically because now we flipped it. Now the choice is the same.
Yep.
But if they fail the roll, roll a 2. End. We have cut all of the choice time out of it. Okay? So, it is just, that's why you organize things that direction. Because you don't put You don't put analysis paralysis in front of the gate to see whether or not you're allowed to execute on the choice you made.
Yep.
And as often as you can. Okay. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but there you go. Okay. So, to return back to what I was saying. The timing for these is bad. It's in between these two other things that you actually want to be doing. Right? And moreover, these just don't carry enough water to make non-hero monsters actually do work and keep up. Like, theoretically, you don't have that many hero monsters in your army most of the time. There are exceptions. Okay? But oftentimes, if you want to get the full clutch of behemoths, you got to dip into just monsters. And most monsters just suck. They just suck.
Yeah.
And the way they would be better is if they had good monstrous rampages they could do. Right?
Yep.
But they don't. These just don't do enough because your main guy roars, then somebody stomps, and then you're done. Because everything else is trash. And the stomp was bad. You just did it because it was like, whatever, it's some free damage. Right? Because there's such a clear rating of these. It's like, okay, roar is incredible. Best heroic action in the game. Or, sorry, best Monstrous Rampage in the game, by far. Including all special ones. Right?
Yep.
The only thing that's potentially on the level of roar is the King Broad and Ogre. And yes, I put him in that order just to bother Haywo. 3d6 surf over the top and land behind after a charge. Right?
Yep.
Because again, that one doesn't actually check. It just happens. Those are the only two that are on the level with roar.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Okay.
So it just sounds like you just need better design.
Yeah. So like these have to do more stuff, right? All right. Before I go to the next one, I want to hear your thoughts. Your thoughts on Monstrous Rampages hit me because I ramble for a lot there. I'm passionate about this one because I love monsters. I'm Timmy through and through.
It just feels like we need better design and we need more options. And so if I think either roar needs to be brought down or everything needs to be brought up to like that. Like that's, to me, that's the starting point. You're doing mortals, great. It's a D6 now, right? Which it like I know that some people are gonna flinch there and be like, oh, that seems so powerful. I mean, yeah.
I'll just wait till we flip to the next page, Tom. I love that you and I think alike.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would love to see impactful monsters abilities if that's what we're doing and you can't replicate them, right? Like imagine a roar, like it doesn't have to be like they obviously roar been saying like terrifying presence or whatever, where you could like force a model to move outside of 3 inches directly away from you.
Sure. I mean, forced movement's always hard to navigate in this game for like a million reasons. As we learned with Dawnbringers Part 2 with the improved smash to rubble that then started causing all the giants to teleport.
Indeed. Right. Yes, obviously that's not the intent.
Right.
But I think that something like that could be really interesting.
Yeah, and like the problem here is that this should be actually the thing that sets monsters apart because they all get to do one. And it's like their thing. Right?
Yep.
This should be the thing that actually makes monsters interesting. And it shouldn't take a couple of book ones. Like, I'm not opposed to book ones, okay? Like, Broads and like, people have mentioned some others of their favorites, right? I don't remember the Avangori ones off the top of my head, Bob, so I'll take your word for it. I mean, Avangori generally sucks, but it's fine. Like, it's cool if they have good Monstrous Rampages. I don't remember. And people mention the Strike Last of the Tree Lord, which is, again, that is a good Monstrous Rampage. It's certainly on the level because it's a 3-up fight last effect. So, hey, pretty great, right? Not bad at all. And the problem with these is every so often we'll get a book where an interesting monstrous rampage occurs, but we've just got this foundational weakness of the core four being complete trash. So they have to keep writing new ones so that monsters actually have something to do, because they know you'll never take monsters because you run out at like 1.
Yep.
Right? You stomp because it's like passable. That's like a C grade. You pass the class. But nobody's thrilled about it. Right?
Right.
Merkforge says, do we need them? Could we just make monsters better? I don't know. It's a good question. I think one of the interesting things about it is that if you just make all the monsters better, generically, which is a path you could go, then those monsters just are what they are, right? They have whatever's printed there. And there's no skill checking to it, no nothing like that. And if the monster's bad, it's in the list phase. If it's dead in the list phase, right? Whereas because Monstrous Rampages are a modular piece that can snap onto any monster, it makes all monsters more interesting if you have a well-designed system. Like if we had 4 core interesting Monstrous Rampages here.
Yeah.
Right? Then all monsters immediately, without needing to redesign 200 War Scrolls, become better. And like realistically, they're not going to rewrite 200 War Scrolls. They just won't. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
So, this is like we can attack the precision problem and do something interesting and skill checking, where like using the right Monstrous Rampage at the right place is actually highly valuable, right? And that to me feels like the better fix. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let me and I do agree it does set them apart as a feel from other types in the game, right? Because they have access to this unique thing, there's some kind of verisimilitude to it of like, oh, it makes this unit feel different, right? Because it can do this thing that nothing else can do. All right. So, let me redesign them, okay? We're gonna again. Let's start. Let's start at like the most minimal move possible, as always, and then travel out from there. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So if we were forced to keep well, I'm not even keeping all of them. That's a lie. If we were forced to keep something like the current thing, here's my answer. You roll a die on a 3-up. You select one from below, max 1 usage of each per phase. Now, I've seen some people asking about the 1 per phase thing in the comments. I do think the 1 per phase thing is more interesting than allowing them to just spam them.
Right.
And
everybody to do the same one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I do think that then leads to some amount, like there is a cost there. The cost there is analysis paralysis. But the payoff there is you can design them to be a little more powerful when you know they're capped at 1 per phase, and which is a positive. Like, because if you're gonna make them all so they can be generically spammed, then you've got to set the power level lower, right?
Yep.
And 2, it then adds an element of sort of skill testing in a way that people will learn when and how to use what thing and how to best apply their resources, right?
Yep.
And so that's also interesting. Okay. And so here's some basic ones, okay, that I wrote. These, again, I'm just starting.
Sure.
My initial thought was let's stay as close as possible, but I want to go far afield from that as we talk here.
Sure.
Okay. Definitely not tough. Definitely not. They're already doing that. That's called the old world. We don't need to do that, and that's also a terrible idea because that was a bad game, or at least at various points in times. That I often loved. Okay. Roar. The unit may not issue or receive commands. Fine. Keep it as it is. There you go. Let's just imagine and design around that. Okay. Stomp is now a D6 mortal wounds. Non-monsters only. Okay. I'm going to up its mortal wounds a whole bunch, but make it real swingy. Maybe they get out of the way. Maybe they don't. But it's a big old mortal wound hit, right? Nobody I should say it this way. Nobody relies on rolling a d6. Yeah?
No.
You get 1, you get 6. Both equally possible.
Yep.
Titanic Duel. We're going to improve it in 2 ways. First of all, it's +1 to hit and wound now. Okay. And it can target monsters or heroes. Okay.
Yep.
But it only applies to the monster attacks. So if you've got a Mountie guy on top, he's not involved in this.
Yep.
The dude does not benefit. And or any other crew. Right?
Yep.
Right.
How do you sorry. I was already moving forward on your sweeping blows.
No, sweeping blows. +1 attack, infantry only. Like it can only attack infantry. Okay?
Okay, so sweeping blows would lock it into attacking infantry. Would sweeping blows also be monster only, not dude on top?
Good question. I hadn't thought about that. I'll say maybe. Sell me either way.
No, I think the right answer is like we're imagining the monsters doing this, not the guys on top.
So yeah,
right?
let's say yes.
And
Let's say yes. It's only the guy on top.
It seems like a natural consequence. The other one I would do is terrifying presence.
Sure.
And choose a unit, a non-hero unit within 3 inches. That unit gains strike last.
I think you could go strike. Like there's so many. Let's talk about potential new. Like let's
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you know Warpstone Enjoyer said, haven't infantry been bullied enough already? My answer, no, definitely not. They have not been. They're still the kings of this game. Have you seen zombies recently? They're pretty good, man. In fact, they're like maybe the best. Infantry units are traditionally like pretty strong. But at a deeper level, monsters are meant to be a counter to massed infantry, right? Like I've watched Record of Lodoss Wars. I know how this goes. You get out the Demon Dragon of Demon Dragon Mountain and you let that boy loose on an army. That's it for that army, homie. Right? You can have all the ballistae you want. It don't matter none when Shooting Star comes around and starts breathing fire. Okay?
Yeah.
So like yes, this is the counter to that. Right?
Yeah.
Now, the so like other places to explore, shutting off inspiring presence when you're near them. We already do that with all the big giants. That's not even a Monstrous Rampage. They just do that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I could see that as being a thing. I could see counting for less on objectives. Like the UMessin ability that brutes have, where they can like turn off 1 and 2 wound models within a certain distance as counting toward objectives. I could see the same sort of thing being there, right?
Like large in charge, if you will.
Scattered confusion or something like that, where they're just preventing other things from counting toward, like within a distance of them, just counting towards objectives, right?
Shock and all.
Yeah, sure, right, exactly. I could see turning off retreat while you're near them, right? Or something like that. Kind of the inverse of the forced retreat, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, I would love like, forced retreat would be cool, but it's very hard to execute in combat, right?
Yep.
Plus, it's usually a buff for the enemy, not actually a penalty.
You could turn off pylon. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, shutting off. A couple people mentioned that in the comments. I think that's exactly right. Yes, and great for a monster.
Yeah, like because that takes away the advantage against those infantry units without directly penalizing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like stopping pylons would be very cool, and moreover, not only is it flavorful, it makes sense what's happening there, right? Like where it prevents them from coming any closer through, you know, various and sundry things you could imagine giant monsters doing that prevents infantry from getting up and surrounding it, right?
As was observed by Destiny in the chat, infantry it's not a keyword that we have. It's a tag that we don't have a clear indicator of.
Yep, I'm assuming in 4.0 we do. I didn't mention this, but I've just snuck this in. Okay, like
sure.
I am assuming that in 4.0 we become smart and create a keyword and definition for what infantry is. and then that's a thing.
Like, wouldn't it be wonderful if it was just like we have monster, we have hero, and we could do something like infantry
And infantry and cavalry, sure.
and cavalry? Weird to just have those, and like they don't even have to. They could be keywords, right? Or
Sure.
they could just be battlefield types.
They could just be keywords that exist on scrolls. Like, I don't care,
Right,
right?
right.
Like, whatever. It can exist in 10 ways, right? Like, just make it exist so that you don't
Sure.
have to keep defining this in like 50 ways every time you clearly want to use something like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
In every book where they have to be like in every battalion and stuff like that, where they're like, infantry means, this, and it's a unit with this wounds or less that doesn't have a mount or a companion or a crew, aura. And I'm like, okay, got it. Cool. Right.
yep, yep.
So yeah, I'm just assuming that like has a formal definition. Um, yeah, I think there's just so much room to explore here with what monsters could do. Let me ask you a question. Is 4 the right number, or do we need, like, is 4 the right number because you think, well, 4 is sort of the behemoth cap, I guess, right? So is 4 the right number, or do we need more?
I think we need 6.
Okay. Just that's the just you gut feeling that's
That
the right number.
Yeah, in my gut, that's the right number because you'd inevitably have conditional monsters rages.
Sure. Would you want to go the same direction you mentioned with heroic actions, where there's like Grand Alliance specific ones, or are monsters just of a cohort that like, nah, we can have a single unified list here? And does that cause you some agita if the two systems have different uh, typographies, as it were?
Yeah, I don't mind if they have different typographies. That doesn't bother. And in fact, I think I like that better.
Okay.
Like I like them feeling distinct,
Okay.
them having their own shape because this forces a roll. Like I would like heroic actions to never roll,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I would like monsters actions to always roll, and it's
Yep.
always a 3.
And it's always a 3 up. Yeah. And like when
Yep.
new ones are added on scroll or something like that, it's still the same thing. It's a
Yeah.
roll. Now, if you want to
Roll.
make some special monster that's like really good at its monstrous rampage for some reason, then you could just say like they get a +1 bonus to their monstrous rampage roll if successful.
Or they get to re-roll the dice.
Yeah, whatever.
Right.
Right. So like it's not as though we still can't play with that mechanic, right? We're just
Right.
that design space is still there and just ready to be plumbed quite easily. So it's not as though you can't have one that's still on a 2 up or nearly automatic through a reroll or whatever.
Right.
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 Okay. But yeah, I just feel like when it comes to Monstrous Rampages, one of the things that lets me down the most is that we haven't explored all this space. That we were stuck with like they got this idea of destroying terrain, and like that is just I could not jettison that thing off the list fast enough, Tom. I couldn't, because it's just the stupidest thing. What does that do? In 99% of the cases, nothing. Just nothing. It does nothing. Right?
If all terrain was like faction terrain,
Sure.
right? In such a way that you could just grab it and pull it off,
Right.
and it all had approximately around the same size.
Sure. And there
I
was
think we're
space at tournaments to actually like set terrain where you weren't setting it on the ground and then kicking it and breaking the TO's
Yep,
terrain
yep, yep,
or cluttering up the tables or whatever. Like
yep.
we don't
If
live in a world where we can remove terrain from the table. Like the terrain is on the table, it's on the table.
Right, right. So like breaking terrain and then not removing it from the table doesn't feel right. Um, and then you have models and just all the things, right? Like all those things that are problematic. And so I think that since we can't just like, since it's not terrain that has a clear footprint that is easily removable and not without disrupting models, then the ability just needs to go.
Yep. So to me, the answer here is let's make like I honestly was going to answer 5. Okay, and I'll tell you why.
Okay. Okay.
I wanted 5 to handle heavy monster factions that have cheaper monsters, but yet can still take they can break the behemoth limit, of which there is plenty.
Sure.
And if they go super monster heavy, they often end up having their own Monstrous Rampages in there. And yet those factions will tend to, not always, but often. And by the way, they should in the future. Like if you're going to be a monster focused faction, you should just be showing up with your own Monstrous Rampages that are unique and add to your choice set.
Sure.
There. But assuming if we assume that most of the monsters show up with like one more, right, that they're bringing, then that gets me back to 6. But then I leave room for the special one there because we had the same number in our head. I was just getting there through a different way, right? But then generically, I still have the room to compensate where I'm not always necessarily burning. Like if I'm heating the normal limit, I'm not always burning through the same 4 every round.
Yeah.
Right.
Indeed. Yep.
So if I'm not fighting a monster this round, or if I'm not fighting infantry this round, I still have another thing I can go to.
Sure.
Right? Because I would want the 5th one that was in like the base set to be pretty open-ended, right?
Yeah.
Like Roar, like where it's like usable against anything.
Where it feels like there's some flexibility there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got 2 that are like generically available, and then 3 that are like more specific-ish to what's being fought. Right?
Yeah, I can see that.
So that to me feels like the right sort of balance where you've got your primary 2 that are good against everything, and then your 3 that are like, okay, this one's against monsters, this and heroes. This one's against anything that's not a monster. This one's against infantry.
Yeah.
The most common unit type in the game, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. Like that would feel like in most rounds, if you had 4 things, you'd still have 4 things to do with that choice set. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah. All right. Matt P said, honestly, every monster should have a special rampage ability. And yeah, I'm not against that at all. Like, I don't mind at all if basically monsters just show up with their own Monstrous Rampage on their war scroll. I don't mind that one bit. I think that's perfectly fine. Doesn't need to be the case in my mind, but I don't. But like, if it did, I wouldn't hate it. Singer says, hello, you caught it live. Hi, Vince and Tom. Hi, Singer. How you doing, buddy? I just think that there's a lot more space here. All right, cool, good. Anything else we want to say on Monstrous Rampages before we move on to command abilities? Okay, Tom, before I move to the command ability slide, how did command abilities used to work, Tom? Who could issue command abilities?
Heroes and
no, before the current world, who could issue command abilities?
Heroes and like command models.
No, that's the current world. I'm saying before that. Your general.
Yes, you're saying like the beginning. Yes.
That wasn't the beginning. That was quite recently. That's how quickly your brain has smoothed over all of AOS history. Okay? No, this is a very recent thing. Okay?
Yeah. It doesn't feel that way.
Halo is correct. You're general, right? So we moved into this world where like everybody's issuing commands, right?
Yeah.
And command abilities are a really interesting thing because we not only open the door to, and here I want to start with a little more theory, because we not only open,
and for a while it was those that actually had command abilities on their war scroll.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Weird world, right? Anyway, this system has changed a lot, and I point that out to say this system has changed a lot, edition to edition. Right? We keep redesigning this, trying to find the right like way to crack this nut. Okay.
Yep.
The and Haywo said making every single unit basically a general was like 1,000% quality of life improvement, but also maybe too much. But you probably can't put the bunny back in the hat. I agree with Haywo. Like we've opened this door. We're not stripping the command abilities away from like unit champions or something like that. Like it's just not going to happen. Okay. We've already said basically every unit in the game can issue command abilities to itself. Right? We've opened that door. And Pandora's box has been opened, and you can't close it. All the demons are out. Okay.
Yep.
So, but here's my question, Tom. What do we want out of command abilities? Because in 3.0, what happened is not only did we get everybody the ability to issue command abilities, but we made a bunch of new command abilities to be issued, right? In every phase. Bunch of phase locked command abilities. And they're all like, obviously there are still army specific ones, though they've been reduced greatly over the course of the edition. But they exist. Okay. And let's think about what we've added. I want to do a quick rundown here, Tom, because I have a theory. Yeah, I want you to tell me if this theory holds water for you. Okay?
Yep.
Or here we go. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about him. All right. Rally. Is Rally a defensive ability or an offensive ability?
Defensive ability.
I would tend to agree. It restores models to a unit that's been injured, right? Doesn't yes,
Right.
obviously if that unit then lives and goes and fights, they fight better because they have more people, but it's a defensive ability.
And it can't be in combat.
Right, and you can't be in combat. Exactly. Okay, good. All right. Redeploy. Is that a defensive ability or an offensive ability?
I would say that it probably gets used more defensively, but it can be offensive if you're redeploying like a monster into a charge.
Sure, into a charge lane or something, yeah. But you're right.
Yeah.
For the most part, the generic use of redeploy is basically as a defensive command ability, right?
Sure.
Somebody marches up to you 4 inches away or 5 inches away or whatever, you redeploy to try to make it a really hard charge, right?
Yep.
That's just kind of the stock standard use of the thing, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Unleash Hell. Is that a defensive ability or an offensive ability? This is a tough one.
I think it's a defensive ability.
Okay. Why so?
Well, because you are only going to use it, like you're using it in a way to reduce the effectiveness of the damage that's going to be incoming on you. Whether you're trying to remove models or trying to reduce their profile.
Or dissuade somebody from charging you at all because they'll die.
Right, or dissuade them from charging you at all. So it's a porcupine ability, right?
Yep.
If you come and hit me, you're going to take damage. So you're trying to de-incentivize. I would say it's a defensive ability.
Okay. I think that's justifiable. I mean, obviously it's a bit of a defensive ability using an offensive tactic, but I think your porcupine assembly is right.
I don't like you're not using it to reach out and touch somebody ever.
Right.
Like that's not how it's being used. And so it's not an offense. It doesn't let you point and click and delete.
Yep. Agreed.
So that's, to me, that's defensive.
Okay. Fair. All right. All out offense. I think that's in the title. So we'll call that an offensive ability, right?
Yep.
And then all out defense. I think we'll call that a defensive ability, right?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Reroll charge or what, forward to victory, whatever the heck they're called. I don't know. The reroll a charge ability. What are we gonna call that one?
That's offense.
Agreed. Inspiring presence.
That's D. I think that's probably I think it's probably a defense.
I would tend to agree. I think inspiring presence is 1,000% a defense ability. It's about stemming losses, right?
Yes, correct.
If
it's
defense
about reducing damage, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all it is, right? Like there's
Yeah.
this rule that says bravery and check and run away. This is an armor save for that phase,
Yes,
right?
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And then the run 6 is the only one I didn't mention. Maybe that one's called Forward to Victory. I don't remember what these dumb things are called because whoever says their actual names. Um, I that one I'm not even sure it's either. I mean, like if you have run and charge, it clearly becomes offensive, right? But used generically, it's like just a mobility trick, right?
Yeah, I don't think that it's combat offense, and I don't think it's necessarily combat defense, but I think that it is oftentimes it is offensive from like a victor like a an objective standpoint.
Yep. Okay. So now, so that's kind of our sweep. Did I forget anything? Did I get them all? Yeah. Let's say yes. Okay. I mean generic ones here. Okay. Uh, let's talk about how many of those are reactive, right? Like what in there is reactive? Redeploy is reactive. It's triggered by your enemy's movement, right?
Yep.
Unleash Hell is reactive. It's triggered by your enemy's movement or their charge into you. Right?
Yep.
All Out Defense is reactive, right? It's spurned or its trigger is you're attacked,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Inspiring Presence is reactive. It's triggered by you needing to make a battle shock test because you suffered losses, right?
Yep.
So, all of these, all of the reactive sort of command abilities, for the most part, are defensive. Okay. And there's only one. Like I really do think the run 6 is just mostly a utility thing. It's most often used to like score
Sure.
or move to objectives or something like that to score a battle tactic. And so I think that one's just neither, and it's interesting as a generic standout as being neither offensive or defensive. I think that's actually what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas your proactive ones, okay, rally and all out offense, right? Certainly rally is still defensive, but all out offense is like you're going to do that once, right?
Yep.
What I'm getting at with this is right now all of the quote unquote reactivity that's been added to the game is defensive.
Yep.
So when we infused into 3.0 a bunch of new command abilities, we just added the sort of like natural inclination was to add counterspell, or
Well, they
added
they
mana
were
leak.
they were adding interaction.
Sure.
Like the key is that what they were trying to do with reaction is add interaction to things that inherently aren't interactive. Like
Sure.
when you're being attacked, you have no response, and so it's giving you agency at various points in the turn.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. Right?
Yeah.
But not every reactive ability has to be mana leak. Right? It has to be defensive. Like reactions are reactions. You can respond in 100 ways. Right?
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things to me about heavily defensive reactions and the way that they've been stuck into the game is that it encourages you to run super hammers. Like the sort of natural secondary consequence of having a lot of defensive interactivity is for you to run more hammers. Yeah. Because one, you have your own defensive reaction abilities already covered. So your super hammers have the same access to those as anybody else, right?
Yep.
And you can redeploy your super hammer away and hopefully cause them to fail a charge, right? Or whatever.
Right.
You have access to all out defense, blah 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 blah, right?
Yep.
And so like your natural response should be to get 4 hammers in your list. Right? 4 massive hammers you can swing around in your list to go crush people. Because you need to be able to go over the top of all of their things, all of their units.
Right. Right.
Right. I need to get over the top of your Unleash Hell, over the top of your All Out Defense, right? Over the top of your redeploy. I need to be able to have multiple units line up on you from different angles, so it's almost impossible for you to redeploy away from me,
Yep.
right? Like, what it's encouraging is like the more hammers I run, the better I do, right?
Yeah, and that's generally been true for a while.
Mm-hmm. It's been generically true for basically all of 3.0 AOS until we got the reign of the like unkillable attrition monsters of OBR and SPG. Both of whom had hammers that did plenty of damage. Don't get me wrong. Like,
Sure.
Immortus Guard and Necropolis Stalkers are straight killers. They just also happen to be defensive monsters that are nearly impossible to remove, right? Zombie spam, those zombies do a ton of damage and are very deadly, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just also happen to have like insane regeneration and board control, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so what I'm getting at here is, do we need reactive offensive abilities that help you trade better? Okay.
Okay.
I mean, this is ultimately a trading game, right?
Yep.
Like that is the
So
core
a
conceit.
reactive ability like a unit that is charged, they receive a command if they've been charged and they get fight on death.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Like, again, I don't want everybody who's listening to get like too caught up in the specifics. We're just brainstorming out here, right? But yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like, yeah, in like fight to the last, right? A unit that you can only issue it to a unit that has received a charge this turn, that has been charged, and has not yet fought, right?
Yep.
Okay. That is targeted by an attack. Like, it has the same trigger other than that as all out defense, right? And when they die, they get to fight, or something like that. Or if we want to keep it simpler, when they die, because we don't generally like fight on death abilities anymore because they're rather complicated to sort of educate. When they die, you roll a die, and on a 5-up, if you remove the model, the attacking unit suffers a mortal wound or something like that, right? Like a murderless type of, or a murder roll type ability, right?
Yeah.
You could imagine a countercharge ability being an offense. I think several people in the comments mentioned that, right? Where like you have some kind of, by the way, like 40K had this back for a while because they've had heroic intervention, some version of this, right? Where the hero's like, you charge the unit, the hero's like, oh, hold on, I got to get involved in this, boom, and they come join in the fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a reactive offensive ability, and I could imagine the same thing there. Like, that could be one here, like a heroic intervention where your hero is just like, hold on, I'm in this too. Trying to avoid me, huh? No. Like, you don't charge the mega boss and he's like, not having any of that. I'm getting in the scrap. Let's do this. Right? Or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I could just imagine, again, lots of reactive offensive abilities that make it much more interesting in helping you to trade, right? In making it more costly for the super hammers to come into you. Something like that. Right?
Yep.
Rather than just the defensive abilities. What do you think? So let me ask, like, one, do you have any thoughts on the entire situation I just laid out? Am I right? Am I imagining things? What do you think?
I think it's a really complex system. Filled with a bunch of conditionals.
Yep.
That could use a ground up redesign. Like, I'll say it. I'll be the one to call it out here.
Sure.
I appreciate interactivity. I struggle with like again, the complexity is it's difficult to teach younger players and new players.
Sure. Just because there's so much going on that they have to remember. Like, okay, in this
Yeah.
phase you can do this thing. In this phase you can do this thing. Is that what you mean?
My encouragement to you is to find somebody that is completely new to the game, that has no conception of the game, and sit down in 15 minutes, try to explain how a turn works and why you would decide to do the things that you would do.
Sure.
Um, and I think what you're quickly going to see is that just there's this huge invisible um, data bank of actions, counteractions, often sitting in these command abilities that makes the learning load of this game very, very difficult.
Okay.
Yes, we like Final Fantasy 3 or whatever, but all of the baggage, right, that sits underneath in the subsystems and the
I
just
didn't play
the
any of those. I had a Sega, but continue.
I know, indeed, Shining Force 2. There you go.
Okay, cool. Now
Um,
now I'm back
yeah,
on board. All right.
yeah, you're
I'm
on.
back
You've
on
dialed
board.
in.
All
Yep,
right.
yep. The reality is that uh, like you didn't get all the mithril pieces the first time through, right? Like that's you're not doing that.
Gotcha.
And so I I am interested in the long-term health and longevity of the game.
Okay.
And we have built an edifice, particularly in command ability, that is unsustainable, like for the growth of the game.
Okay.
Like, I feel that in my bones. I have largely not played this game with my children in the last 3 years, 2 years.
Okay.
The reason is because it's just too much for even 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds.
Sure.
It is.
No,
And these are kids, by the way, who can expertly pilot commander decks.
yeah, sure. I understand.
Like
I understand. You're
that
playing
that
complicated
community.
100-card singleton magic decks with your kids. Yeah.
Yes. And being able to juggle all of the variables that are going on. It's not in no way are you in a space where it's, read the card, do what the card says. Like
Yeah.
that's not what this game is. And it doesn't it doesn't exist anywhere in that realm right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is what do we need to do to get the on ramp for newer players back to something that's more manageable?
Okay. Okay.
So that's my pushback on command ability.
What's the answer there in your head? No, that's a perfectly fair pushback. I get that completely. Is the answer like last week? One of the things I had proposed, and we've talked about it on this show before, is I am very much a proponent of a starter battle pack, a standard battle pack, and an event battle pack. Okay, of sort of 3 levels, right?
Right.
And one of the things I've talked about is that the starter battle pack would strip out a lot of stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
we were talking. I mentioned it because we were talking secondaries last week, right? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
was that last week? I don't know. 2 weeks ago, at some point. I think last week. I don't know. Time's a flat circle. I'm pretty sure it was last week. And my question is, are you like saying, okay, in the starter battle pack, there's like 2 command abilities, and they're used in combat, and it's like all out attack and all out defense. Let's just imagine those are sort of the simplest ones. Whatever we think of them as far as power level, they're certainly the simplest to execute. Right? You're attacked or you want to attack. You do this thing, or like reroll charges or something like that. That would be the kind of thing you'd keep 1 or 2 or 3 of them, if you were going to keep any. Or are you saying 0 of them occur here? And then in the standard battle pack, maybe we have some, but we have an on-ramp into it. Okay? But we have a version of the game that cuts this completely. Or are you saying jettison this whole system, okay, and we need something really we need to really take this back to formula and think about what we're doing completely. Like command points, command abilities, the whole concept turn it on its head, reinvent it in some new way?
I mean, so what I would do is this. The first thing that I would do is I would scale back whatever's going to be in the core rule set. I would scale it back to a handful of options,
Okay.
two to three.
Yep.
Make those universal.
Okay. So maybe
And
like
then,
you mean in all battle packs. So again, maybe it's like reroll to charge, all out attack, all out defense. I think the three simplest ones we all have in our head, right?
sure, sure, sure. And then, and this is super contentious.
Okay.
Like, and so
We can
I
be
like I
contentious.
acknowledge that right from the get go. Um, we move a command ability back onto heroes.
Okay.
Um, and so then you have for any given hero your core
Mm-hmm.
plus whatever's on the scroll if there is even anything. Some of them will not have anything on their scroll, which
Sure.
is kind of the world that we live in, right? But I would default and lean back into more command abilities being on scrolls. And so I wouldn't even mind if something like this. Let me push this.
Paint me a
Uh,
picture.
yes, it could be reroll all charges as one of the three. Reroll all
Sure.
charges plus two plus one.
Again, I'm not
It could
wedded to
also
any of
be
those. I'm just kind of picking them because they're sort of three simple
it could
ones.
be also be auto run 6. So
Sure.
it needs to be a mobility is the point. And
Mm-hmm.
you could more liberally sprinkle reroll charges onto many more hero command. Like if you're
Okay.
like there could be a stable, and so like this is a world we could live in. Okay. We could have the uniform 3.
Sure. Whatever they may be.
Okay. And then we could have, let's say, I'm gonna pick a number out of the air. 6 other abilities that are just sprinkled across all non-unique heroes.
Okay. So like
Okay,
you're
and
saying
so
there's a singular sort of choice set, but it repeats and is
it
deployed
repeats,
in
right?
different ways.
This is a combat hero, foot hero, so he's gonna have one of the more combat uniform 6 abilities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then your unique heroes could have their own unique command ability.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and so the actual knowledge pool then is going to be 3 plus 6 is 9 plus then any uniques.
Sure. The advantage is if you're actively playing. I mean, there is something to be said for, to me, the sort of the thing that the advantage to what you're laying down is that the text is no longer hidden, right? Because
No,
actually
no,
on every hero war scroll, what it actually says is also you can do all these heroic actions we mentioned earlier, and also you can issue all of these command abilities, right? But that text
yeah,
isn't present. You just have to know that by looking out to a different part of the rules, right? So you're
right,
minimizing down the amount of stuff that's existing somewhere else that isn't printed on that scroll. Now, if they can do like if they have an unleash hell or something like that, whatever. I'm
right,
just saying it generically, right? Then
yeah,
that would be something written on the scroll. The person knows they can do it. If you have the scroll in front of you, you know it's a capability that guy can do.
right,
Okay,
right,
you
right,
can read it right in front of you. It's not hidden
right,
information, right?
right. And I think that to me, that's the most egregious part of the current edition is the hidden information when you're teaching new players. Because what I have to do is have to create cheat sheets for my kids or whoever else I'm teaching how to play the game with like not only phases, right, which is like just kind of the entry level helper and what you're going to do in those phases, but then an entire sidebar of abilities that may get activated in those phases.
Yep.
Um, and it like if they're going to sell war scroll cards, put the rules on the war scroll.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't hate that at all. Um, the thing I would say is like, I sort of have two different feelings about what you just said. Okay.
Yeah,
So let me see if I can let me parse out because I'm reacting in real time, obviously, to your idea, right?
yeah, yeah,
So to your first idea, which is let's cut the game down to a very simplified list. Let's say 3. We could even go
Sure.
4 if we're feeling very generous, right? Maybe it is like, run 6, reroll charge, inspiring presence. Maybe that's
Yep.
it, or something like that, right? I don't know. Okay,
Yep.
or
Yep.
whatever. Okay, then I like the idea of these things being specific to the hero and having them be printed on the war scroll and stuff like that. Because there is a cost there. The cost is exactly what Singer just said, right? Where you constantly have to flip to the hero to see if it has that ability. Like, you have to know all of your hero's abilities.
But in list building, you're choosing what command abilities you want by choosing what heroes you're activating.
Sure. No, I agree. It's not separate information. It's just there. Like, you have to remember all of that and put it together and know that that's what they're bringing to the table, right?
Yep. Yep.
I'm just saying there is some cost there, right?
Sure. Sure. And we do this already with other abilities.
Of course. Of course. You pick the hero for other utility buffs that it brings to the table, right? Like, for the
Right.
same reason. This would just be one more thing like that. Like, you already picked the Skink Priest because he had the ability to because he has the run and charge spell, or he has the
But he may also be what you need to rally skink unit.
right, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. So, like, rallies out of the game as a generic thing, but the certain heroes that like, it would make sense, those certain utility heroes that are very closely tied to their unit, they might have the ability to rally back those dudes.
Here you go. Necromancers can rally skeletons and zombies.
Yeah, sure.
Weird.
Sure.
Right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Um the um assistant rep said, if you're going that far, do you even need such a thing as command abilities anymore? Why not just make them war scroll abilities, not mess around with command points and all that? Well, because theoretically, if you have 4 heroes and they all bring their own unique command ability plus the 3, you're still balancing between those and paying off opportunity costs. You're not punching the button 7 times around,
right,
right?
right.
Like,
And that's what you don't want. Right.
right,
You want there to be opportunity costs because that's how you let them be powerful. But you let them be
right,
meaningful because it's a meaningful decision.
right. So there's absolutely still, I mean, unless you're playing Slanesh Pretenders, in which case, then hey, go nuts. Um, Trip dip, baby. Infinite command points, go. That army sucks, but that is a fun ability. Um, the the thing I'm not sure about, okay,
Sure.
is the thing I'm not sure about is the idea of the repeating 6. Maybe, but maybe I'm reading it too more strongly than what you're thinking. I don't know. Okay. So,
Okay.
like, because I wouldn't want it to be like, if many were that. Okay, if many were just the same repeating 6 of some
Yep.
kind, then yeah,
Yep.
I'm okay with it. I wouldn't want it to have to be just unique heroes that have that have access to
Sure.
something different. Like, I think it could be an interesting way to have a couple foot heroes. Again, going back to my earlier point, like, it could be an interesting thing to have a couple foot heroes that you want to make have an interesting role in the army, have a unique command ability that they bring to that army. Again, you'd
Yep.
want to be careful with this. You wouldn't want more than like 1 or 2 of these generic guys per army, than maybe whoever's unique. But just unique is such like a heavy baggage it brings with it in the game, right?
Well, and so what I would say is this: it wouldn't have to be unique, but it needs to be distributed like it was on unique.
Yeah, that's fine.
And
I can
so, like,
accept that.
each book is going to have a handful of
Yeah,
like unusual command
that would
abilities.
be the way I would say it. There, I'm back on board, right?
Yeah,
Because also unique characters are distributed really inequitously across the forces,
of course.
right? Like,
Uh,
certain cast
Yep.
armies have like 62 named characters, and then you've got like Iron Jaws. We just got our first named guy.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm talking about, right? Like, that's not what I'm leaning into. What I'm leaning into is the fact that, like, in general, you're going to have in any sampling of distribution, it's going to be one of the 6 on 90% of your heroes, 80 to
Sure.
90% of your heroes, and then a handful of your heroes are going to have standout abilities that are often going to be related to what they are.
Yep.
That,
Yes, exactly.
that's
Heo
the
said, "What's a
vision.
unique character?" Undersigned ogres. Yeah, exactly right. So, but yes, now I'm back on board. If we're saying distributed, kind of as like if the real thing you're trying to put your finger on there is a couple, a handful, whatever that means, what the right number is, right? Like let's call it 1 to 3 or something like that, right? Of the unique command abilities per army, right? Then I'm back
Right.
on board, and I actually like this idea quite a lot because
Yep.
now you are like again we can go back. One of the problems that we've constantly had is that those foot heroes are very hard to like what's the reason for taking them unless they have an amazing utility. But if they have a cool command ability that could let them be offensive or that could be unique or let them be defensive or let them actually play a role, then not only could it be utility, but it could be anything. So your melee foot assassin could actually do his melee foot assassin job because he has a unique command ability, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yes. So so the key is here, and I'm gonna kind of I'm not gonna wrap us up, but I'm gonna like
No, it's
kind
okay.
of go big picture. Because like we're at command abilities, we're at the end, right?
We're at the end, yeah.
Yeah. Um, in this, what we've done is we have both streamlined each of these systems, but allowed them to remain distinct in what they're doing and how they're functioning. And then the combination of these three systems together are going to generate a complex ecosystem of actions and reactions.
Yeah, without any one of them being overly heavy. And the advantage here is that by the way, when with those War Scroll printed command abilities, whether we're talking about the unique ones or the generic ones, I would still want some of them to be reactive. It's not like
Sure.
reactive abilities
Absolutely.
go away. Just to
Yeah.
be super,
Yeah.
like
Unleash
uh
Hell should still be on a war scroll.
right, it's just printed on the War Scroll, right? It's the thing and
Right.
this is what it does. Or redeploy can still exist, but it's on the War Scroll. It's not just something generically every unit can do all the time ever, right?
Right.
And so on
Right.
and so forth. Reactive offensive abilities could be on there, countercharge abilities,
Yep.
and
Yep.
fight on death type of damage on death things, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yep.
Abilities could be on there. Like you can have quite a lot of different reactive command abilities that are happening, but they'd all be then more tied to the heroes, those specific heroes. That would create more opportunities. Like as a Johnny, this would open up a lot of doors for that type of player, right? Because then the
Sure.
list building phase becomes a very interesting series of decisions that are made,
Right.
right?
It's moving in some ways back to 2.0. Like it's dialing back the trajectory that we've went on in 3,
Mm-hmm.
and yet it's also simplifying.
Right. And yeah,
And so
Assistant
it's
Ref, you're
looking
not wrong. He said, by the way, those already exist to some extent. Think of the countercharge and the Doom Bull. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
And so there is some warrant for this, right? But the key is that most of your command abilities are going to be on heroes. Are going to come from a stable of like 6 abilities or something like that. That's
Yep.
not the generics.
Yep. Right.
So
Right.
that's where I'm at for what I think the command ability system should be.
Okay. I mean, my honest answer is I really don't hate that at all. Badger said, "How about on the War Scrolls? There's an indication of what phase the ability can be used in." Yeah, I love that. There's no reason, right? Like on the War Scroll, there could be a label, an image, an icon, a something, a signifier, big bold letters that just says like command ability, bold, parens, hero phase, whatever. Like you can do
Yeah.
whatever you want. You could have it be visual, like you could have it be a little symbol for the hero phase.
And or it could
If
be
you want it to
like
be
charge
language agnostic.
like parens charge phase, comma reactive or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Like like you can do a lot with very little.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Singer, I think the hope is it wouldn't because you would know, like because Tom's saying this set list of like 6 that then gets sprinkled around and then plus 1 to 3 uniques. You'd know what you have in list building. And like everybody would know the shared 6 because they have some heroes that had them and they either put them in their list or they didn't. You either put the Unleash Hell guy in your list or you didn't, right? And you know who the Unleash Hell guy is because it's one of the reasons you took the guy. You took the guy for Unleash Hell. For the same reason now, like I said, you take the Skink Priest. You don't flip around. When you take a Skink Priest or like whatever, okay? You know, when I take the Engineer to overcharge my Warp Lightning Cannon, I'm not flipping around to see who has the overcharge in the Warp Lightning Cannon. I know who does that. It's the Engineer. That's why I took the guy. Right?
Yeah,
That's
and
why
he's
he got
standing right
in the
next
list
to
building
the
phase.
warp
He got in there and he's standing right next to that because that's why I put him in the list. That's how I deployed him on the table, right? And so, it does raise, like, the Colt Spink says, I guess I'm confused on how this simplifies the game. I feel like from a new player, you may be confused as to what models, to what these models do and use what abilities. Yeah, I don't think you're totally wrong there. There's always a learning curve if you want this in there. I think the place it hopefully simplifies it is it becomes non-hidden knowledge. Like it's on the scroll. If they hand you the scroll or you read their scroll or whatever, right?
Yep.
It's now just like a known quantity. That's what this guy does, right? It's written there clearly, transparently on the thing.
How many command abilities do we have currently that any one hero could do if they have 0 command abilities on their all out defense, all out assault?
I mean, everything I named earlier.
Yeah, I know, but I'm wanting to count them. Reroll charges.
Was it 9? Is it
auto. Yeah, I think it's like 9, right? Like auto run 6, rally,
Inspiring Presence, Unleash Hell,
Inspiring
Reroll
Presence,
Charge.
Reroll charge. Yeah. Anyways, that's 9 abilities that every single model on can do, or every single hero on your table could do.
Sure.
Right. And so now you're going to tell a new player that they have these 3 command points to spend on these 64 options.
Yeah. Yeah. Assistant Ref says this is all great until GW puts AOS War Scrolls behind a paywall like they're doing with 40K right now. I thought they backtracked on that in 40K. 2, that would certainly suck. 3, they've committed to never doing that with AOS. AOS War Scrolls will always be generically free. They have said that repeatedly and often through 3 editions. They've never given us any indication they're going to backtrack on it. I mean, a company is a company. It makes decisions. They're not contracting anything in blood. But you know, at this point, we're 9 years into the game. They've kept War Scrolls free for 9 years. They've repeatedly stated their commitment to it. Again, you don't make design choices because of because they might do something wrong in the future. Like you talk about what's the good state.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
And yeah. So. And again, I said, like every hero can do one of those 9, but the reality is that in a lot of armies, it's not 9. Because we have heroes with command abilities, and we have allegiances that are bringing command abilities, and this is a challenge, right? This is the challenge of it's all of this information, and none of it is actually on any of the war scrolls. What you're supposed to be playing the game with. Like at that point, we're back in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, choosing magical items and a bunch of other things that are modifying what your characters are that are nowhere near profiles or anything like that.
Sure. Justin Joy said, wouldn't that make lists really samey? SCE kind of already has this with the translocation tax. Yeah, I think there's a potential for that. You'd have to watch that carefully. I do think that's a potential downside. Like, I don't think you're off in crazy town there, Justin. With the chance that it would have a downside of where lists start looking a lot of the same because people gravitate towards certain heroes to bring certain command abilities into their army.
Well, I mean, the reality is that, okay, so you have 6 different heroes, right? What that tells me is that you're creating a diversity of units that you're adding to your army rather than the same unit 5 times.
Yeah, and I mean, with your the other pushback you could give would be, well, you mentioned an example right now with the translocation tax. I mean, most armies already have this. They tend to include certain units because of utility abilities they already have. Are we actually changing anything? Like, don't we already do that? You already take certain units because of certain abilities they have because they're the good ones that do the good things, right? So I don't know that this would dramatically change the situation any. It'd probably just be more of the same. I think is what I would come down to. If designed right, it could open up some of that space because you could provide counterweight. Right.
Yep. And
if you thoughtfully designed it.
you're allowing an on ramp player.
Sure. It's interesting.
Which is something that we don't have right now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we have like, and I don't want to say this too strongly, but I feel this in my bones. We have a game that is designed to die in the long.
Well, at the moment, yeah. I mean, hopefully that's a whole. We did a whole show on that. Like, if fourth edition wants to avoid the slow death of like Warhammer Fantasy, we have to get the new players. We have to get the new player on ramp rebuilt. That thing got demolished as we transitioned into 3.0, and like there is no easy way for new players to come join this game. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Yeah. It's tough. Yeah, I agree with that. All right, lots of good thoughts. Hey, I want to know what you think. First of all, thank you to everybody who's been putting lots of great ideas in the comments tonight. I told you I wanted your ideas, and boy, did you throw them out there, and I loved all of it. Thank you for all the great, insightful commentary back to what we were doing. It's really great. So good stuff. I very much appreciate all the interaction. Hey, don't forget to hit like if you didn't already. Tom, good thoughts tonight. I think this is good. Hopefully we gave him some stuff to think about. We'll see how it actually all shakes out in probably 9 months from now, I assume, or something like that. That's probably when we'll know. And I guess we'll see. But hey, hit like, hit subscribe, do all the things that make dings. It's fun. It helps other people find the channel. And we thank you so much. If you want to support the channel, there's lots of ways you can do it. Besides hitting like and subscribe and all of that. You can share it. That's totally free. Just hit share and tell people about the show. You can check out the new merch store down there. You can see the cool... Tom, did you see the new... Did I actually show you this? This showed up? I don't think you saw this last week. Check this out. Wow.
I did go and look on it. Like I looked on the store.
So that's how that came out. Real nice.
I saw Kathy's new character as well.
Yep, she's got her new character in there with the canines of chaos.
The doggo, the Countess of Doggos.
Yes, indeed. And so we had to get a death faction representative, and so of course my wife fills that role easily. And just being like, like not for any negative reason, but just because I would fear her the same as a vampire lord, like absolutely.
Checks out.
And but anyways, you can check out the new merch store. That link's down there. There's links if you're going to buy hobby supplies. There's links down there for Monument and Element games. You can click through those and use our codes. Hey, you can also check out the Patreon. That's more hobby focused on review and feedback and taking your next step on your hobby journey. Or you can just watch more videos on the channel. That's great too. But as always, I thank you so much for watching this one. And if you've got more thoughts on stuff we didn't talk about, drop them down in the comments. Talk about it. I want to hear your thoughts. But as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.